many respects in my life, I became more mature than my peers at a young age, just because of how my life unfolded. And perhaps also it's a character trait. Musically speaking, though, I was never drawn into virtuosity. I was never drawn into showing off. And I was always sort of looking for the inner core and the inner beauty of music. And I think with age, that's what a lot of people start looking for again. And I think that's also why, for the most part, we see audiences that are not on the young side, but on the older side in classical music. Because after they've had their fun, after they've had their parties, after they've had their dances, somehow looking for that pure and untouched beauty is what draws us back to classical music. I think that's certainly what I've found in it. That infinite spectrum of joy and of pain and of suffering and all of the human emotions and all the elements in the world put in a 1-hour concert. It's amazing. And I've always enjoyed that. So perhaps that makes me old for my age, mature for my age, or whatever it might be. But that's not only who I am. I'm also still young, and I'm also still a very normal person. But certainly when it comes to musical experiences and my approach to music and my approach to being on stage, it's more traditional than modern. I love all of Beethoven's concertos, and the Emperor has a certain posture to it that is particular. And in a way, actually, I liked it less than the others because it's more outgoing and extrovert. It's not as intimate. It's not as searching. It sort of makes a statement. But I've learned to embrace that statement. I've learned to embrace that sort of stature of it and to give it its breadth and sonority that it requires. And I think it has, of course, its beautiful, stunning moments like the second movement, but just that overall perception, I think, of really presenting yourself as it is and with no embellishments and complete confidence. That complete confidence somehow shines through, and of course, we can go back into history and add that Beethoven by that point was completely deaf and he couldn't play himself anymore and all these things, but yet he wrote this piece with this sort of complete posture of, I know what I'm doing and this is what I want to say. And it's quite incredible that he had the courage and the guts and everything to do it. When I'm in a concert hall and I want to play on the piano, that's very, very important for me to be in position on stage on my concert instrument because, of course, it's not practice per se. The practice has been done hopefully before. It's about actually knowing your instrument, that particular instrument, knowing the hall, and testing the limits, in a sense, testing the limits of volume, of time, of what the hall gives you, what the piano gives you. it's super, super important for me to spend that time on the piano. And then when I come and I play it on stage in concert for the audience, I have a much better appreciation, a much better knowledge of what exactly I can do, how I can play, basically. It would be possible. Physically, you can surpass some things, not everything. Your body needs enough rest simply to do it, and if you're too tired, then no matter what you do, you can't give it your all. It's amazing that you just can't push it beyond certain limits. But mentally is a whole other matter. At 3 a.m., I'm not sure how coherent I would be playing that. I could certainly play some pieces in my sleep, so to speak, and I think the result would still be quite good. Others, perhaps not so much. Yes, I'm quite a low-key person, and beyond late nights out because I'm playing concerts, I would rather be in bed by 10 p.m. and at home. There's always a balance between what is professional life and what is personal, and I think every artist finds their own way in that. To me, I love my life on stage, and I love sharing music with an audience. And I also feel very responsible because it isn't just me playing casually whatever I can do, but they come with a certain expectation, so I certainly want to deliver that. And it's not an expectation of playing perfect or playing in a certain way, but I always give it my all, every single concert, and 100 times a year that sometimes can be a little bit much. And on the other hand, I also have, I believe, a very interesting personal life beyond it, and I want to sort of live that personal life and not only be on stage all the time. Other art inspires, of course, other forms of art. I love seeing paintings or sculptures, being in galleries, being in beautiful buildings, architecture, being in beautiful spaces. And nature, I think, is the key inspiration, as much as it's a stereotype and it's such a cliche, but it is. I mean, it's perfect, and you can find so much beauty in it that can inspire you for a long time. I think in music, at least, you're always pursuing something different, and that's why I didn't go into sport or swimming, is because you have to be so focused on the one thing, and you can never deviate from that course. And in music, it is the one thing, but I think you have the inspiration of other aspects and not just that strict following of one. Music drew me in, obviously, from an early age. I don't come from a musical family, so I wasn't sort of immersed at home in a family of musicians and instruments and so on. My parents enjoyed music, without a doubt. Not particularly and only classical, but all sorts of music, and they were listening to all sorts of recordings all the time. So yes, that was an immersion, but nothing conscious and nothing on purpose. But when I started piano lessons, I think the fact that there isn't a certain path, there isn't a right or wrong, there isn't this sort of yes or no in music. It's up for negotiation. Everything is up for negotiation, and you can find your own way. That I think gave me, always spurred me to continue working in it, because there was never that, you couldn't achieve perfection. You couldn't just say, okay, this is great, and then you start fine-tuning it. No, you're always still searching for those basic answers, so it's always interesting, and I think that really has kept me in music. The way I started new work, when I need to learn something or I want to learn something, I actually just literally get the music and I start playing. And I see what I can get from that sort of very initial reading. I like that carte blanche. So you start, of course, with experience and with age and simply being around, you hear lots of music that you want to learn, but some of it you don't know very well. And I like that approach, that you have a complete, you have a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of ears, and a fresh approach to it. And of course, then it is important to find out a little bit about the history of music, also the history of how it's been played. So I listen to my colleagues, both present and past, and get a sense of how far off was I from my very sort of intuitive performance, intuitive based on the score, which is basically the composer's intentions. How far off I was from the tradition and what we're accustomed to, and then I make my choices based on that. Of course, that's a very easy assumption and correlation to make, and I don't blame people. I think it's difficult on the other hand because I was born in Canada. I have lived there all my life. Yes, I'm fortunate because my parents taught me Polish. I'm fortunate because I went to Poland a few times, but that's no different than if somebody else would have learned Polish and gone to Poland a few times. I don't think you can really say that there's any advantage to DNA in the blood. And certainly my affection for Chopin came from a natural place, from a place that I simply love his music, and I love how he uses my instrument in his music. Can you explain that by DNA? I'm not so sure, because some of my favorite artists who played Chopin are not Polish and have nothing to do with the country. So I think that speaks bounds for how international and how broad music can be. I think as humans we are very keen to try to describe things, to explain them, and we use words for that. And words fail in music. We're talking about music right now, but I would have a very hard time to tell you in words what Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto means and how to play it. You can't say that in words, you can't express that. And I think that the same goes for when we're trying to explain that a certain artist plays it in a certain way, and that perhaps the nationality or the culture, the history or the age or whatever has some influence. Everything has influence. Life has influence. I play and I tell a story, and when I'm sitting in front of the piano, it is a story that, of course, I draw from my own life and from what I've imagined. It's not only a story that you have to have lived through. You can have a vivid imagination and go through it. And I think that when you're on stage, you have to embrace that and simply give it your all. And what people try to explain later, well, if they are searching for words, then that means that I've done my job. Certainly don't try to create new trends or counter current ones, but I do look in a sort of very basic way at what's in the score and try to strip down what has been accumulated over the years. Accumulated in the sense of traditions or our knowledge of the score, our knowledge of the music, our appreciation for it. And that sometimes can mean to a sort of more puristic approach. But that isn't to counter any trend. It's not on purpose to make something different or stand out. It's just because that's how I see the music. And I think, of course, my interpretational ideas and my soul somehow always have to come through. But in the end, I have to be a little bit in the background of what the music is. I certainly don't want to jump across that barrier and be at the forefront. It should be Chopin or Beethoven, and then Jan Lisiecki, and not Jan Lisiecki, and then these great composers. I'm honored, of course. I have many great colleagues in music and, of course, in piano as well. And it's amazing because they all follow their own paths. And I think sometimes I would hear something by my colleagues and be very inspired, and other times I hear it and I think it's appalling and it's disgusting. But this is because you have your own opinion, and I have my own interpretational ideas and very firm viewpoints, because that's what happens. And I know that the audiences perhaps don't share my viewpoint, and I completely am at peace with that, and I appreciate that. Some people do, and some people are open to them at the very least. And I think that this is what makes music relevant today. Why are we listening to Beethoven's Fifth Piano Concerto that was written over 200 years ago? Because it's still different every time we hear it, and it's never going to be the same. Music really lives in live art, and as much as recordings are important, and as much as all sorts of archival purposes of them do have their own meaning, but being in the concert hall, experiencing that fleeting moment of beauty, that fleeting moment of whatever it might have been, is amazing, because it's only shared with the people that are there. As an artist, as a performer, as a classical pianist, Germany is one of my favorite places to play because you have a deep appreciation, I think, and a long culture of coming and attending and being a part of classical music, of being a part of the concert. And that's an amazing gift for us performers because there are very few other countries, if any, in the world where you can play in so many different places. Not only in, say, Frankfurt, Berlin, and Hamburg, and Munich, but also come to Peenemünde and you'll have a full hall playing, or maybe play in Bochum, and there's a superb festival that takes place. I don't want to change classical music to accommodate it to young people. I want to give them the chance to experience it, to come to the concerts. But I'm a staunch traditionalist, and I love music being the way it is. I love classical concerts having a traditional format. I don't want to add light shows or drinking beer during the concert or anything. I think it has its place in the world to be the way it is, to be a formal event, to be something where you celebrate music at a very, very high level. But I'm also glad to see that young people do embrace that. And I do see in my concerts a lot of younger audiences, and that is wonderful. As far as securing the future of classical music, I think I have a lot of colleagues and a lot of people who are helping me with that. And I really, honestly, ever since I've started playing, this has been a subject. And yes, I'm still young, I'm 27, but it's already 12 years, and I don't see that halls are getting emptier or that we're having any problem. I really don't think we will have a problem with this. But I think we have to maintain that high level of production, whatever we're doing, that it is the best that it can be and not changed for the times. I don't think we need to do that.